Yeah, there's no planet B. I'm like, let's fix this one. So I think that transition, what logically has to follow is then how do you sustain people? And in the book, Rutger Bregman does talk about that. So he talks about the need for a universal basic income, sometimes gets called a social dividend, this idea of we need to put a floor under people so they can afford food, they can afford housing. And then the studies have shown that when UBI comes in, usually you do see like a 1% to 3% drop in the amount of employment, but that extra hours is spent on study or caring for children or the elderly. So it's a net gain for society. Anyway.
The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash Invest and Anna Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
I don't want to use Amazon, but I have to because I have kids. It's 15 years later, and your kid wants their first summer job. Only option, Amazon warehouse. My kid likes crafts, and they want to work at Joann Fabric. There is no Joann Fabrics anymore. It's just Amazon warehouse. My kid likes sports. He wants to work at the sporting goods store. There is no sporting goods stores, but you can put basketballs in a box at the Amazon warehouse. No bathroom breaks, no inside jokes. I don't want my kid to work in a warehouse. Okay, they could be in a truck. They could deliver packages from an Amazon warehouse to other parents of other 2-year-olds who will never not work in an Amazon warehouse.
I saw this the other day and I was like, wow, is this where our future is going?
It could be. I hope it isn't.
No. Thoughts, feelings?
Well, I have this thought all the time. Like, my kids are little. What are they going to do for their career, for their job? How are they going to live? What does the future look like? What do jobs look like? What does life look like? I have absolutely no clue, because we're at that point where the rate and speed of which things are changing are just so rapid that it is impossible to know what the next 5 years, let alone 40 years, look like. I don't know.
This feels very dystopian. You were telling me just before, Lacey, about how we actually create a utopian society instead. What are some of those things?
So firstly, just on how it feels, that terrifies me as well, because I've got children, and my children are just once started high school, so they're getting closer, and I am still like, I don't know what to tell you to do for a career, because how much will be automated. So I totally feel your pain. But yes, I do prefer to focus on the utopian alternative.
Tell us, what are you telling them?
So I think I did engineering, right? And I always used to tell people engineering is a great degree. Problem solving is fantastic. And I still think problem solving, anything that teaches you problem solving, although AI can do it, there's so much error in our content at the moment, it's going to be a long time. And I do wonder if the advantage of knowing how a rotary phone works, right, that you used to stick your finger in a hole and you used to turn it, might be something that becomes important to solve a problem later, for example. And if we have people who don't understand those things and AI doesn't understand those things, that we might miss out on a good solution. Anyway, so I think problem solving is good, but I think anything that's service related, so that in that example, they said, oh, you have to put the basketballs in the box. No, you can coach basketball. There'll probably still be basketball coaches, so I did gymnastics coaching for a career when I was a teen, that kind of stuff. So I think there are, that sounded terrifying, but her point is still, Yeah,
I just had a laugh. I don't have kids, so I laughed a little bit. I was like, that's kind of funny. Thinking about all the small businesses closing down and how things are it is cheaper on Amazon.
Funny.
Yeah. So I was amused.
I know.
Hearing your reaction, yes, of course it's terrifying, but it's not in my realm. I had my fun jobs. I did the random shops and stuff, and they might might go out of business. I think about this one at shopping centers. When I walk through a shopping center, I'm like, when are these going to disappear? Yeah. There's no need soon.
Well, and that's where anything that's human to human, service related, anything that's creative,
healthcare,
all those things, there will still be areas where humans are essential. And I hope what we'll end up doing is using AI as a tool and then just doing better with those things, making our services much more effective. So I do encourage my child to do things that are creative, things that are to do with interacting with people, able to look them in the eye, shake their hand, and things like that. You wouldn't believe how many children cannot conduct a conversation with an adult that I meet these days.
Is it because of COVID?
Maybe COVID, maybe reliance on devices, maybe less opportunities to practice. They're only talking to their family, and when they're outside of their family, they're not very comfortable. So that was a really interesting experience when we went overseas, forcing my children to go to the counter and talk to everybody, and do the change and stuff. And why do we have to do it? Can't we just tap? No, I'm teaching you something. You don't like it, but too bad. Anyway, that makes it very hard to tell people what career to follow. But I think if you think about skills, problem solving, human skills, creative skills, interaction skills, I can't see a world where we'll do without those completely.
No, I think we'll always need humans for healthcare, and there will always be error in AI, and you'll always need someone kind of managing it at some point and like checking it and keeping it up to standard and being like, actually, has it gone too far off? Because people will be needed. Yeah.
No Skynet, please. But I think about like human history, people used to work in factories 12 to 16 hours a day, probably longer, 7 days a week. They used to work these massive work weeks, and now we do an average of 35 to 40 hours.
But they still do in some countries where
certainly do.
Shane and Timmy come from, but yeah.
Absolutely. But on average, for thinking about Australia, people are now, we will work about half of what those people work. So this experience of us not having to actually work the full 40 hours a week to achieve an income that is going to be able to sustain our lifestyles is a really interesting one. And there's a book by Rutger Bregman, who's an economist. He's really interesting to follow, and he wrote Utopia for Realists in, I think, 2013. I first came across it in about 2017, and I really liked it. And the first concept in his book was the idea of the 15-hour work week. We need to get used to this idea of what we would consider part-time at the moment becoming more normal, and we need to set up society in a way that work is not taking up 40 hours a week. It's probably taking up 15. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with the rest of the time? Well, hopefully you'll be looking after your family. You will be indulging in things you enjoy. You will be volunteering, whatever really,
contributing to society in another way.
Exactly. Whatever you really enjoy.
That's fun to think about, because then you need less childcare workers if more people look after their own kids. You need less Uber drivers if people are driving their friends around.
But it's hard to do that because technology has taken over our lives. So many people would rather pick up their phone, message someone, scroll, than they actually sit down and have a conversation with someone.
But is trust going to change that? What I'm interested in is the amount of lack of trust in things like the media, scams, all that kind of stuff. Like, I would be very happy doing most things online, but there are some things now I want to go in the post office to do because I don't want it texted because I get too many Post scams, like that kind of stuff. So I do wonder whether that progress will be halted or somewhat slowed, or people will start to come back towards I need something physical as proof because I don't trust this online, especially with all the generated stuff about voices, stuff about you can take a video of me. There's enough of me online. Someone created me.
Same.
My parents have weird code words for me to use. If I call them, they'll make me say something. And it's new every time. It's like a weird memory or something. Oh, really? Mum's onto it.
Yeah, see, I've got one from like my childhood. No one will ever guess what it is, but it's always been the code for if the house ever got broken into and I was being held at gunpoint, you need to say this. That kind of thing. Still using the same one with my dad. But it is one of those things that I think that might actually impact it because we've got so low trust in some of those systems now. But you're exactly right that the trend has been exponential. We've gone so quickly towards, I don't want to talk to a human. I just want to chat to the bot online to solve my problem.
But how do we get to 15 hours if I feel like people are getting second jobs again because they can't afford life on a 40-hour work week?
The transition's not clear. We do not have a clear, how do we get there?
Because with AI, we should be more productive.
Exactly.
We are more productive, but then you're just squeezing more productivity out of people,
Hasn't Australia's productivity stalled?
Well, is productivity the best measure going forward?
Yes, that's a good question.
Growth, because everything relies on exponential, well, not exponential, but continuing growth. All of our economic modelling relies on we're going to continue to grow. We cannot continue to grow because the earth is finite and our resources are finite. So we actually have to change.
We're going to Mars,
this is the challenge with capitalism, right? That's the challenge because it's like you constantly need growth. And if we can't sustain that growth. Like you just can't. Like what do you do? You can't just squeeze more water out of a wet cloth. Like it ends at some point.
Exactly. And we're a good 300 years away from proper human settlements on Mars. It ain't happening.
Yeah.
Because the planet will be dead by then.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Just in case anyone's listening. It's like people talking about, oh gosh, I shouldn't get political. I was going to say like nuclear power. Like, look, I get what you're saying, but by the time the nuclear power is here, the planet's dead. We have to do everything now. You've lost your window.
And there's other options.
It's the same for Mars. We've lost our window for that to be a solution.
And there's other options.
Exactly.
Why are we going to these most extreme ones that might hurt us more than just dealing with it now?
Yeah, there's no planet B. I'm like, let's fix this one. So I think that transition, what logically has to follow is then how do you sustain people? And in the book, Rutger Bregman does talk about that. So he talks about the need for a universal basic income, sometimes gets called a social dividend, this idea of we need to put a floor under people so they can afford food, they can afford housing. And then the studies have shown that when UBI comes in, usually you do see like a 1% to 3% drop in the amount of employment, but the extra hours is spent on study or caring for children or the elderly. So it's a net gain for society.
And it's good for society just generally. Less crime, so we save money on jails. Yeah, there's so many benefits to it.
Yeah, and it's very hard to monetarily prove those, but the question is whether we will be forced to go there simply to make people able to feel safe and secure. And especially at the moment, we're seeing us get to a pointy end where that's probably going to become inevitable. So that was the second concept he talked on in the book. They kind of go hand in hand. And then his third one, which we probably don't want to go into in too much detail because it actually did scare me when I read it as well, was this idea of open borders. We need to be prepared to allow unlimited migration for anyone because 95% of people apparently who migrate go back. The only reason they don't go back is
when they actually can't because it's a war-torn country.
Well, usually it's the stress, it's this hard part of going back. So his research on who goes back was quite interesting. I don't know how relevant it is now because obviously COVID will have really changed that for a lot of people. That was back in 2013. But it allowed people then this idea of we're not going to spend all this time and energy defending borders where we can put that energy from security to survival.
Yeah, I've always thought about like how unfair passports are and how like I can, with my Australian passport, kind of get visas wherever I want, go through, you can kind of like skip the line and then watch people with different passports who have to line up and talk to a human and can't use e-gates and just, it's pretty crazy to reflect on that.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating book. I recommend it. He's written other books since then. He speaks at things like Davos. He's a really interesting guy. He does hold people to account. His thinking has evolved on some of those things, but I think it's a really good, if you're feeling dystopian and stressed and miserable and going like, bugger it all, I'm going to go buy a private jet. I'm just going to...
it sounds pretty good. 15-hour work week and universal basic income. Like they sound like great things.
Yeah, so read that book and have a think of that and how do we move from that society. So I think this idea of a smooth, safe transition is the one we need to be thinking of. When we need that goal in mind, we need to agree what that goal is, but then how do we get there before we need riots, before we need the equivalent of the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette saying, let them eat cake, which I have to say a lot of our billionaires are getting very close to.
Katy Perry in space.
Close,
like
just
that.
close.
Yeah. Katy Perry with her flower.
Yeah.
But it is hard because you have to change the system, right? And
Exactly.
you need multiple people to be on board. You needed money to change the system. It's not like a thing where everyone wakes up the next morning and we're like, hey, we've got a new way of living life.
Exactly. It can't be instant.
Yeah.
But we have to agree that growth is no longer the measure. Productivity is no longer the measure.
So what's the new mother? Yeah.
Survivability. It's got to be, is it sustainable and survivable?
And when do we get to that point? When it's too late?
Well, knowing humanity, we will.
It's still like if we're still arguing about whether or not climate change is real when it is real, like we get so stuck on like, is this happening or not, rather than like, this is happening, here's how we fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that whole, you're arguing, there's that great sculpture, I think it might be in Switzerland or Sweden, I can't remember which one of the two. One of the ones that starts with S, but it's the politicians arguing about climate change and they're all underwater, like it's over their foreheads. That is exactly what's likely for us if we don't all very soon agree on what that's going to look like and do that transition, because human nature is it's not that bad a risk until it actually affects you.
Yeah, until it's here. Like global pandemics. We knew one was coming eventually, but never mind.
And that's the sad thing about us. And I think a lot of people who study history and anthropology will tell us that that's how humans roll. So are we going to evolve? Be smarter
We're
than
just
that?
the boiling
I hope
frog.
so.
We're just the boiling frog.
The boiling frog jumps out. It's the frozen frog who stays in just because I'm a science nerd. I
there
love
you
it.
go.
But the analogy you're meaning, I get. We sit there and we tolerate it and then it gets too bad eventually for us. But by then it's too late. You're cooked. I get what you mean. Yeah.
How do we prevent all future kids working at Amazon warehouses? What can we personally do now?
I think every dollar I spend is a vote for the future and every dollar I invest is an exponential vote for the future because of compounding. So I think with all these things,
we need an ETF without Amazon.
Yes. Well, it's always an interesting one, the ethical investing thing. A lot of people talk about, I want an ethical ETF, but they have banks. I'm sorry, banks are some of our least ethical institutions in terms of human good.
I've seen, like the ethical investing thing is interesting. It doesn't really work with ETFs because you don't get to vote, but I've seen people invest in companies that they don't agree with necessarily, so they have voting rights. And there was one of the mines in WA I saw shareholders voted against something because they wanted better climate or environment action. I was like, oh, that's a cool way to take advantage, but most of us just buy ETFs, so we don't get to go to those voting things.
I know, it is an issue, but that activism ownership, so there's a couple of people who do that, like Carla Khan in the States is really famous for doing that. Wonderful that they do it. But I think personally, if you're making the decision, you just want to, similar to the way that we eat or exercise, you want to be doing the thing that is most consistent with your values most of the time and not beating yourself up if you occasionally slip.
Yeah.
That would be how I would think about it, because I think otherwise you spend too much time feeling really guilty and also overthinking, and then you're focused on something really small when you could be spending that time doing something much more impactful. So if you're feeling guilty about it and you do it occasionally or, then don't beat yourself up if there's an alternative. I personally want the alternative as much as I can, but it does take extra effort.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when Amazon is just so quick these days. But I don't have an Amazon account, so that makes it easier to not order off Amazon because it's too
strategy.
hard.
Yeah. So friction, introduce friction. That is a really
Don't
good
save
point.
your card details. Don't even look at it.
Unsubscribe to all the
Block the ads.
Yeah. So hopefully anyone who buys on one of those things that they don't want to buy on again unsubscribes.
Yeah, I'm
That's a very
glad
good
Temu
one.
is very overwhelming because I've looked at it when it's popped up before just out of curiosity, and it makes you spin the wheel and you have to download the app and sign up, and it's just like too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good strategy. And they obviously
If
very
you're
effective.
addicted to that stuff, if you're an anti-shopper, then you're like, oh my gosh.
It's too much.
Yeah.
There's too many options. And how do you pick between like 10 of the exact same thing?
I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's like thrift shopping. It's like, I love the concept. I want to do it. I don't mind secondhand stuff. Whenever my friends are getting rid of clothes, I'm like, yes, I'll dig through it. But you put me in a shop and I'm like, oh my gosh, get me out of here. It's just too much.
I like to scroll until I've seen everything so I can make the best decision. But these days, a lot of shops you can't scroll to the end because there is too much. So you never feel like you're like never fully informed. So it'll always be a better option. I'm glad I feel like that because then I don't shop too much.
It works on our human psychology of,
Yeah.
I know. And that is the great irony of humanity.
Yeah.
You get more money working out how to get you to click on something than you do saving the planet. So
Yes,
like
and
that is
convincing
what's
you-
problem. with
Convincing you that the planet isn't actually warming.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Yes.
Okay, fun. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invests or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing, so make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.